Let's Get Wellington Moving is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to shape our capital city and the way that it supports the greater Wellington region. It's an essential part of how we carry out the critical task of reducing our carbon emissions and how we make this region more resilient and address the growing need for affordable housing. It also supports the ambitions that we all share for more compact and connected communities and livable and walkable neighbourhoods. These are bold ambitions, but as we stand here in 2022 with the climate emergency in front of us and many other challenges and opportunities, we need to be bold. If we want Wellington to continue to be a great place to be, where people want to live and work, where people want to invest, then we need to continue to develop the city to cater for both population and economic growth. And that includes improving how we live and move and work around the city with reduced carbon emissions and with much greater resilience. We need to get ready for that change now. For too many years, for too many decades, those changes and those investments have been kicked down the road, and our government is clear that we won't do that any longer. Let's put things into some perspective. By 2050, up to 80,000 additional people will call Wellington home, and 25% more people will be coming into the central city every workday from across the region. If you consider how we move around Wellington today, often in private vehicles, it's clear that we cannot continue to do that while not having serious effects on travel times, carbon emissions, productivity, and generally speaking, the quality of life for people who call this place home. While we need to cater for the growth that Wellington demands of its transport network, we also need more homes, particularly affordable homes, and we must focus on reducing our emissions. These three outcomes align inside the Let's Get Wellington Moving programme and across our programme partners. And here again, I just acknowledge that what we're talking about today is a partnership between the Crown, Wellington City Council and Greater Wellington, and we are all aligned on the objectives that we want to achieve. And so the vision of Let's Get Wellington Moving is to move more people with fewer vehicles, to enable more housing and to help reduce our carbon emissions. And everything that we've done and decided is being measured against those objectives. The government's emission reduction plan includes supporting people walking, cycling and using public transport and reducing total vehicle kilometres travelled by our light vehicle fleet by 20% by 2035. Improving our urban areas and access to the products and services that communities need and providing travel options that are convenient, accessible and located close to where people live is essential for the future of our biggest cities here in Wellington, but also around the country. Transport is the biggest source of emissions in the Wellington region, accounting for 40% of all emissions in the region and 48% of all emissions within Wellington City. Between 2001 and 2019, total transport emissions rose by 14%, and we urgently need to turn that around. It just can't continue. The projects that Let's Get Wellington Moving is working on will prepare us for this transformational change. But before I move on, let me remind you briefly of how we have gotten to where we are today. 4 options for mass rapid transit were considered against the programme's objectives and weightings that were developed by councillors and Let's Get Wellington Moving decision makers to ensure that the recommended option delivers meaningful changes in livability, access, carbon and mode shift, safety and resilience. Importantly, a key factor in this assessment is the relationship between mass rapid transit and enabling changes in land use. In short, how do we ensure that we get more homes with the amenity that's needed to support them along the route? All of this highly detailed work, analysis and public consultation has brought us here today and marks a milestone for the future of Wellington and future generations of Wellingtonians. And I particularly want to thank and acknowledge the thousands of Wellingtonians who did engage in the public consultation process earlier this year. Their feedback and views have been very significant in shaping up the decisions that we are confirming today. And so today I am pleased to confirm that the government is announcing that our preferred approach is light rail from Wellington Station to Island Bay, a new tunnel through Mt Victoria for public transport and walking and cycling, and upgrades to improve traffic flow at the Basin Reserve as its preferred option to get Wellington moving. This is a transformational shift for the city, and I can just take you briefly through some of the details now. There we go. So here's a useful overview of what we have confirmed as our preferred option for the Let's Get Wellington Moving Mass Rapid Transit program. The first point is that this is a high quality, high capacity mass rapid transit network. It'll move from the central city, the Wellington rail station, through to Island Bay, with continuous bus priority to Miramar, which will substantially improve the quality and reliability of public transport. This is a very important part of the program. Moving through from the city centre to the southern suburbs is the corridor which gives us the greatest capacity to support high quality, affordable housing for the people of Wellington. We'll also have high quality bus rapid transit connecting to the eastern suburbs, which will significantly improve transport options and travel times for the people of those communities. Secondly, there'll be a significant transformation around the Basin Reserve to improve all modes of travel. The Basin Reserve will no longer be a congested, unpleasant roundabout. It'll be a much smoother functioning transport area for all modes of transport, for people travelling in vehicles, for public transport, for mass rapid transit, and for walking and cycling. It's fair to say that the Minister of Finance and myself have been determined right throughout this that there is a sensitive approach to dealing with the Basin Reserve, which we consider to be a jewel in Wellington's crown, and this will significantly improve the urban environment around the basin. Thirdly, there'll be an extra Mt Victoria tunnel to improve public transport, walking and cycling to and from the eastern suburbs. And I do also note at this point that within Let's Get Wellington Moving, the Mass Rapid Transit program is the linchpin, but there's a huge amount of additional work which is going, and we expect to see significant progress on the Quays and the Golden Mile over the coming year as well. At a slightly higher level of detail, the Mass Rapid Transit program, as I've said, will take light rail through that southern corridor. From the Wellington rail station to Island Bay, via the waterfront quays, Kent and Cambridge terraces, the Basin, the hospital, and through to Berhampore. The bus priority to the east will go from Kent and Cambridge terraces to Miramar, and the airport via dedicated bus lanes through a new Mt Victoria tunnel. The current Hataitai bus tunnel will remain in place, and that will be used for local public transport services. We are within the program that we are taking forward, reserving bus rapid transit along the corridor that I've just described as a reserve option. As I've identified, the intention of mass rapid transit and light rail is that we support a very high level of urban uplift, between 16 to 21,000 more houses along the route. There is more work to be done to ensure that we can deliver that, and we think that it's prudent to include the bus rapid transit option as a fallback if required there. Secondly, in a bit more detail around the basin, what we will effectively be achieving here is significant grade separation around the Basin Reserve area. It will no longer be a roundabout. The Arras Tunnel will be extended towards Mt Victoria. What this enables us to do is to separate out two major traffic flows. Over the Arras Tunnel on the Sussex Street side, that'll be for light rail, buses, vehicles and people, and you can see from the images that what we create through this is not only better transport connectivity, but pleasant, open, green spaces for walking, cycling and recreation and urban amenity around the basin. And then around the north side of the basin and through the Arras Tunnel, that'll be for highway traffic heading towards the motorway. So significant improvements both to transport and urban amenity around the basin. Thirdly, on the extra Mt Victoria Tunnel, the new diagonal tunnel that you will have seen on the map earlier on will support an additional public transport connectivity through Mt Victoria. So what we will achieve ultimately as a result of this investment is all modes having access through Mt Victoria. The existing tunnel will be shift to being a walking and cycling tunnel, so we'll have provision for private vehicles, for high quality bus rapid transit and for walkers and cyclists to be able to move from the eastern suburbs into the central city area. Folks, light rail provides, in our view, the greatest benefit to commuters, especially those using public transport. And while Let's Get Wellington Moving does not seek to make private vehicle trips faster explicitly, there will also be benefits for motorists because the more people that we move onto high quality public transport, walking and cycling, the fewer people will need to use our busy roads. Once a light rail transit system is delivered, analysis shows that catching public transport during the morning peak will be around 14 minutes faster from the Miramar town centre to the Wellington rail station and around 8 minutes faster from the airport to the rail station. That is a significant benefit in terms of travel time, and if we encourage more people to use efficient and modern public transport, we not only reduce those travel times, but we significantly reduce our emissions. As I've described, light rail will also enable greater density along the route and a diversity of quality, affordable housing. With support from our partners, both our public sector partners, local council, but also the development community, it's our belief that this route could potentially enable between 16 to 21,000 additional homes for Wellingtonians. And they will be homes that are better connected to public transport, reducing our reliance on private cars and ultimately decreasing our carbon emissions. Importantly, people living in these homes will be close to opportunities, close to education, close to work, close to other amenities. It'll be a very high quality of life for people. Homes that encourage people to walk, scoot and bike, improve people's health and well-being. We've obviously done work in terms of the fiscal impact of the program that we're announcing today. It's expected that the overall program will cost around about the order of $7.4 billion, and that's in 2030 dollars, so effectively accounting for inflation over the period and budgeted at what we call a P95 rate, which gives us a relatively high level of confidence in that figure. It will also yield a benefit cost ratio of 1.2 if delivered alongside a new approach to delivering high quality, higher density housing along the mass rapid transit project. So this is a project which stacks up in terms of the benefits for Wellington and stacks up as a financial investment for the government and for our partners. While light rail will carry a slightly more costly and more disruptive pathway for Wellington in the short term, providing the capacity to carry more people as the city grows means that we can get more urban development opportunities for the city, which in turn offers more housing and opportunities for local business. It's important to note that light rail gives us the capacity increase approximately 3 times greater than bus rapid transit would. Given the scale of the project, the detailed business case will also consider the alternative option of bus rapid transit as I've described. We do think that's a prudent step to take to make sure that we have options as we move towards final decision making. The investigation will be completed as part of the detailed investigation process, with Let's Get Wellington Moving aiming to complete that detailed business case work in 2024. In the coming days, the options will be considered by our partners, Greater Wellington Regional Council and Wellington City Council, to support the preferred program to progress to a detailed business case and the next phase of investigations. From there, Let's Get Wellington Moving will begin its detailed business case and all of the detailed investigations that are involved with that, including surveying and impact assessments across the proposed route. Let's Get Wellington Moving's design and consenting phase for this work is expected to begin in 2024. That phase will involve further feedback from the community, businesses, mana whenua and partners, and will also provide for land acquisition along the proposed route. Major changes like this are never fast, but they have to happen. As I said at the outset, for 50 years some of these decisions have been put off, and we see the costs of those now. Wellington is a great harbour city. It's a place that we're proud of, and our government is proud to be partnering with our local government partners to make these investments to ensure that the people of this city now and in future generations have all of the opportunities that they deserve. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you.
Kia ora, ngā mihi nui ki koutou katoa. Ātamarie, good morning. I want to acknowledge Deloitte's first for hosting us today. Thank you very much for having us here and disrupting the start of your working day. I want to acknowledge my fellow parliamentarians, Paul Eagle, the MP for Rongotai, and Mr Wood, who you've just heard from, and our partners, the Wellington City Council and the Greater Wellington Regional Council. Today is a great day. I moved to Wellington around 25 years ago, and I've been the MP for Wellington Central for coming up to 14 years. I've seen a lot of proposals about what should happen for transport in our city. And today, I believe we have settled on a proposal that will future-proof our city in a way that I have not seen before. And that is because what is being announced today is an infrastructure project, an urban development project. It is not a transport project. And that is the critical difference between what Let's Get Wellington Moving has settled upon and what we have seen in the past. This is not a project about making it easier for people to leave the city. It is a project that is about making it better for people to live in the city. That is where we have landed, and that is what I believe is appropriate for Wellington in the future. I ask all those Wellingtonians who have strong views about how we move around our city to take the time to look at this project and recognise that it does represent a very careful balance across the future needs of the people of this city. It might not include every single thing that you want, but it strikes a balance to enable the city to sustainably grow, to be able to reduce congestion, make sure we do continue to reduce emissions, and provide a high quality of life. We simply cannot make that happen in Wellington if we ever add more cars to our roads. We have to make a decision about offering quality options for different transport choices. That means making sure that there is a genuine corridor for public transport. Light rail is part of our preferred option. As the Minister has already indicated, by building it along the route that is proposed, we offer the possibility for high quality urban living experiences. Up to 20,000 more homes built on the corridor, right beside transport options, close to the places where people want to be and want to live in our city. But equally, bus rapid transit to make sure that our eastern suburbs are well served and that people, yes, can get to the airport and back in a timely way. We can do both. We can provide those quality living environments and make it easier for people to move across the city. The other specific point that I wanted to note was the future of the Basin Reserve. The Basin Reserve is, in my opinion, an iconic place, not just because I'm a massive cricket fan, as all of you know, but also because it does represent something important about our city, and that is the importance of green space within our city. And as Minister Wood showed you in the option that he put up, there is now more green space created by this option. I know that for many Wellingtonians, the experience of the Basin Reserve as a large roundabout is frustrating. We aim to solve that today. We aim to make sure that all modes of transport can use the area around the Basin Reserve while improving its amenity value. I believe it is a significant win-win. So from my perspective as the Minister for Infrastructure, this is exactly the kind of project that we want to build into the future, where we integrate our transport outcomes with our housing and our urban development outcomes, where we work in partnership with local government and the residents of the city to make sure we have a long-term sustainable urban development program. We will have to work together on the way we finance this. The government is stepping in with the financing options that we have put on the table. We want to work with our partners around what other options there are for financing and funding to make sure that everyone can play their part, and those options will be considered as we go forward. This is a big project. It will cost a significant amount of money, but the benefit for Wellingtonians, for the wider region, and for New Zealanders that their capital city is a livable city and one where we make sure that everybody has transport options is good for everyone. No transport project, no urban development project ever comes without disruption. But at the end of this project, Wellingtonians will have urban development outcomes that they can be extremely proud of. I'm very pleased today to be here to mark this milestone, and I look forward to the progress over the coming months and years. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. I'm going to invite Minister Wood back up. And we're going to swap places because in a moment that the media might think is something to do with them, I actually have to leave in a few minutes, but we'll take some questions now, and then I believe after we've finished Mayor Foster, we'll also take some questions. Questions?
The preferred option is the least climate friendly, as it been phrased. It does produce, option 4 produce the least emissions for the city. How can that be justified for those options?
What you're speaking to there is the difference between embedded carbon, which is the carbon that we use in the construction of a project, and then enabled carbon, which is how much carbon emissions might increase or decrease as a result of the investments that we make. When we confirmed our preferred approach here, we identified that we would be doing that on the basis of a higher housing yield. And the information that we've been provided via the Let's Get Wellington Moving program team is that if we achieve that higher housing yield, the 16 to 20,000 houses that the Minister of Finance spoke about, we actually very quickly under option 1 reach a point of neutrality and then carbon reductions. So as I said, all of the good outcomes that we want are contingent on making this a linked up transport and urban development project. If we land that well, it'll also be a very good project in terms of reducing our emissions.
Just before the Finance Minister has to head off, is that funding split still 60-40 and is that open for negotiation? And when you talk about ways to finance Let's Get Wellington Moving, can you give some examples of what you're thinking about?
So yeah, we are continuing to operate on the 60-40 split, but Minister Wood is also doing a piece of work, or leading a piece of work around how we look at mass rapid transit across New Zealand, because obviously we've got a very large project in Auckland that you're well aware of, we've got Wellington here, and there are other urban environments where mass rapid transit projects are being investigated or discussed. So we are doing some work to see how we best have a consistent approach, but we're starting from the basis of that 60-40 split. In terms of the financing options, we've been really clear, for example, that we've been investigating things like congestion charging and trying to make sure we provide a suite of options that are available for different councils and for the government going into the future. We'll continue to discuss those options. You can obviously ask the Mayor later on about how he feels about that, but we do think it's important, not just for this project, but more generally, that we take a look at the suite of potential financing options. Bear in mind, we're talking, the numbers that the Minister's mentioned are across a 30-year period. This is a big project, it's a long project, but it's one where the government has stepped forward with our investment, and we want to support our partners to have the financing options to get it through. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's a good summary. It is important to note that both of our partners, that is Wellington City and Greater Wellington, have explicitly approached the government to say that they want to have a conversation about us enabling additional tools for them to be able to support their share of the cost, and that is something that we're looking very closely at.
Just to follow up on the financing, is it a risky move to say with a high level of confidence that you think that'll be the top figure?
Well, look, we obviously know that across all manner of construction projects, whether it's in transport or any other sector, there are clearly pressures on costs at the moment due to global supply chain factors. But what we have asked Let's Get Wellington Moving to do is to provide us with robust estimates at this stage of the project. That P95 estimate, that's actually a higher level of confidence than is usually provided at an early stage of a project like this, where a P50 figure is normally used. So we've gone in with a conservative and robust figure, and that figure, as I say, accounts for costs over the period of the project, not just the costs as we would measure them in 2021 dollars. But obviously further work to be done in the detailed design case to further refine the costs before we make the investment decision.
Does this option keep pace with population growth and the need for much, much greater housing supply?
Yes, that is one of the reasons explicitly why we have focused in on that higher density option, the 16 to 20,000 additional houses along the corridor. We think that that is what we really need to unlock the potential of this project and to meet the needs in Wellington. It's worth saying that this region will grow whatever we do. The question in part is where that growth is facilitated. Do we have a region that continues to sprawl, which tends to support higher emissions, less connected communities, and greater car dependency, or do we put these investments in place which support a better standard of living and lower carbon? That's the choice we're making today.
How much uncertainty exists around the mode at the moment, and how much of that is to do with unreliable forecasts from the City Council?
To the second part of the question, absolutely not. The key contingency around the mode is gaining assurance that we're able to support that level of urban intensification along the corridor. I have a high level of confidence that working with our partners we will be able to do that, and it is important to note that we have brought in both Minister Megan Woods and Kayunga Ora into the oversight of this program, and Kayunga Ora are currently looking at what the options could be for them engaging and partnering in terms of the delivery of urban development outcomes along the corridor.
And be really clear, this is our preferred option, the option with light rail in it, and we think it's really important that central government makes that clear. At the same time, we've both been around these issues for long enough to know that having an option in reserve is prudent to make sure that whatever happens, there's momentum in the project. But the government being clear about what our preferred option is, putting that in front of our partners, I think is the best approach and ensures that we've got momentum.
So how confident are you that that light rail will be the mode that's used for Let's Get Wellington Moving?
I'm as confident as we possibly can be at this moment, and it's certainly our preferred option.
Just on those assurances, what assurances do you need to follow through with this?
What we're talking about here is a broad urban development program that we need to develop. We need to understand what the infrastructure would be that would be required to support that level of housing. We need to establish a partnership across central government, local government and key delivery organisations in the private sector. As the Minister of Finance says, we have a high level of confidence that we'll be able to attain that. If you drive along that Kent and Cambridge Terrace corridor, as I've done and many of you will have done, there is enormous potential for us to have high quality, good quality intensification and amenity along that corridor if we get this right. We just need to make sure that we do the work to assure ourselves of that.
Obviously, there's been some opposition to Let's Get Wellington Moving, particularly from businesses. What would you say to some businesses or people that are concerned by today's announcement?
I think that's the point I was trying to make. As someone who's lived in Wellington for a long time, I've seen a lot of ideas come and go. I've seen a lot of people oppose an idea because there's a small aspect of it that they don't like or a slight disruption to their lives. My plea to all Wellingtonians, including the business community, is get on board with this. This is a fantastic opportunity for our city to sustainably grow and to offer a really high quality of life. And even if there's a small aspect of the project that isn't quite what you want, let's take this opportunity. I don't think it'll come along in this form again. And so my plea to the business community is engage. Of course, as time goes on, you can tweak a little thing here and tweak a little thing there. But this is, in my opinion, the best chance Wellington as a city has to develop a livable city across the next couple of decades.
One thing I will just add to that, this is what every successful, dynamic international city is doing. The days of just ploughing as many cars into your city centre as possible, that's 1960s thinking, and it doesn't work. The cities around the world that work, that are prosperous, that have a high standard of living, are the cities that give people real transport choices, high quality mass rapid transit, and safe walking and cycling options. Look at any city around the world, that's what we want to deliver here in Wellington.
Would you extend that plea to mayoral candidates who might be looking to relitigate Let's Get Wellington Moving on the campaign trail this year?
You perhaps won't be surprised to learn that we're not going to step into the local government election debate. Each candidate will be responsible for their own views here. What we're doing is making sure that the city and the region is clear about the government's preference here and what we think is the right pathway forward. Council and the regional, City Council and the Regional Council have their decision-making processes that they will go through, but I'll leave any putative mayoral candidates to their own devices there. And on that happy note, I'm going to depart.
Is there anything else I can help with before I hand over to Mayor Andy Foster?
I know you mentioned the population growth as one forecast. You've also mentioned a 25% increase in people working in the city. I'm just wondering, is that a figure pre-COVID, or are you expecting people to go back to their work habits before COVID came into our lives?
The advice that we have from the Let's Get Wellington Moving programme team is that we do expect the long-term trend of more people wanting to live, work and play in central city areas will continue. There is obviously an impact that we're seeing at the moment from COVID, but every expectation is that city centres will continue to be a magnet for talent and for employment.
Obviously, there's been some issues with the governance of the project so far. Are you confident that it's on the right track now?
Yes, I am very confident. Look, it's no secret to anyone that as of 18 months ago, there were real challenges across this program. We had a health check which revealed that there were problems in terms of the way that the program was operating. All of the partners have worked exceptionally hard over the last year to make sure that there are strong and positive relationships and that we are focused on delivering outcomes for the people of Wellington. Over the course of that past year, we've now got to the point where we're making decisions about mass rapid transit, where we are looking to move forward by 2023 with construction on significant projects such as the Golden Mile and the Quays. And we've already got construction on a range of smaller projects underway in the central city. Just 2 weeks ago, the City Council signed off on the City Streets Plan, a $300 million part of Let's Get Wellington Moving to improve bus access into the central city area from the suburbs. So this program does now have momentum, and I feel really proud of that.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Tim Jones from the Save the Basin campaign. So first of all, really pleased to hear those commitments to the future of the basin, and we'll be looking closely at the design options. But my question is actually about the proposed new tunnel, which is due to have 2 private vehicle lanes, 2 public transport lanes. Is there anything in this plan that would stop a future government repurposing those public transport lanes into private vehicle lanes?
Well, of course, and from my point of view, unfortunately, we can never constrain the actions of a future government. But what we will do is move forward with this plan. It is a plan that is focused on retaining existing vehicular access at current levels through Mt Victoria and adding additional bus rapid transit capacity. And as the Minister of Finance just said, our plea and our call for everyone, including people from other political parties, is to get on board. There is a substantial decision that is getting made here. There is substantial investment that is coming in behind it. The people of Wellington expect us to get on with this and not to litigate and delay and go back and forward on it. I think we've had too many years of that. So that's a call that I would make to other political parties, and I would be very willing to sit down with them and try and develop consensus around this project to give the certainty that I know, Tim, that you were seeking. And can I just also thank you and the Save the Basin team for your incredible work in terms of advocating for better urban outcomes for Wellington. People forget that it was back in 2014, your action to stop the Let's Get Wellington Moving programme of the previous government, which would have wrecked the basin with an unsympathetic flyover. That's the genesis for the work that we are now getting on with today, and I'm really pleased to hear that you feel good about how things are going around the basin now.
Minister, when you announced those 4 options last year, you talked about a business disruption package. Has any work been done on that since?
There hasn't been detailed work done on that at this stage. We obviously have a couple of years before we start getting to the point where we're thinking about construction in earnest, but that remains a firm commitment that we have. We do acknowledge that when these significant transport projects work through busy city areas with businesses and people living there, that there is a real impact. We've moved on that by developing a compensation package in Auckland for the City Rail Link. We've made that commitment for Auckland Light Rail, and that commitment is very firm for this. We would expect to be consulting with those businesses and communities as we develop up a package that meets their needs.
Has Cabinet, for the option that is preferred, have they yet done a climate implications of policy assessment as is required for local agencies, or is that something that will be still to come?
That will be something that will be still to come at the point that we get to a formal investment decision. That's the point where the money goes in from the Crown effectively, where we have to weigh up those decisions. But of course, as a part of this, an enormous part of the overall assessment of options is the climate assessment. And that's why it was important, as I pointed out before, that we are focusing on delivering a high level of urban intensification under option 1. That is the pathway that delivers us the best overall carbon reductions across the options that we have in front of us. And I've got time for one more. Bernard Hickey wandered in.
How can you make a decision on the option you've made without a clear idea of which is going to be the least carbon emitting, particularly including the embedded carbon involved in digging tunnels and concrete and steel?
A couple of things I'll say there, Bernard. The first, just don't forget that every single one of these options does have an additional tunnel that's built into it, different tunnels albeit. Every single significant construction project and transport that you do will have a degree of embedded carbon in it. That the question is, with the options that you are enabling, what are the longer term carbon reductions that you achieve? The clear advice that we have in front of us from the officials who have developed these options is that if we move forward with the higher housing yield option under option 1, we relatively quickly get to a point of neutrality and reducing our enabled emissions. And that is the basis that we're moving forward with this option.
With option 4, it is better for the climate and costs 2.2 billion less. Why would you choose option 1 over option 4?
Well, firstly, it's more like a $1.5 billion difference. Two key reasons. The first is that the overall benefits that we achieve from option 1 are greater, including the benefits that are monetised for public transport and for walking and cycling. Quite simply, because of the additional changes that we achieve around the Basin Reserve, we have much smoother pathways for public transport, walking and cycling to connect through that area. The bus rapid transit tunnel through Mt Victoria means that we have a smoother and more efficient public transport pathway between the city centre and the eastern suburbs, and we don't get all of those benefits through option 4. Option 4 does deliver significant benefits, and we looked at it closely. But we believe that overall, the benefits that have been measured and assessed by our officials are greater under option 1, especially if we move forward with a higher yield housing option. And that's their clear advice, that the best capacity for delivering more housing is under option 1, and if we go forward with that, the benefits are significantly higher.
Are you concerned that,
including carbon reduction.
Are you concerned that the council's de-intensification of the district plan and pushback collectively at the intensification moves that the governments are doing are effectively just going to offset any extra housing yields you get from option 1?
That's not what I see happening, and as we sit down with our partners at Wellington City and Greater Wellington, we've worked very closely on the fact that this is a transport and urban development program, and they express to me a high level of confidence and ambition for delivering that urban intensification and additional housing capacity along this corridor. But that's probably a very good segue for me to finish off, because I'm getting the word, and to ask Mayor Andy Foster to come up and offer a few comments and take questions as well. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks, Andy.
Kia ora and tēnā koutou, everybody, and thanks, Minister. And can I just start by saying that this is very much a partnership project, and it has been an absolute pleasure working with the Minister over the last 2 years since he's been Minister. And I think we had that mention earlier about the health check that Let's Get Wellington Moving went through at the beginning of last year. So it's really essentially only that period of time that you've seen that momentum really pick up, and that's got us to where we are today. So I think it's really quite extraordinary progress. And it's not just the progress which has been made in the announcement here, but it's also the other projects which the two ministers alluded to in terms of the Golden Mile, Thorn and Quay, Hutt Road, those kind of things, and some smaller projects which are on the actually happening at the moment physically. This is a really big day, a big announcement for Wellington City and for Wellington Region. Very, very exciting. Let's Get Wellington Moving is the biggest investment program that the city and this region have ever seen, and it is truly transformational. As Minister Robertson said, it is not just a transport program, it is a program of transport, urban development and the infrastructure which is needed to support it. That's the pipes under the ground and so on. It's a program with many components. Those components, some of those components I've already alluded to, Golden Mile, Hutt Road, Thorn and Quay, they all work together. The City Streets program of bus priority essentially across the whole city, pedestrian improvements particularly in the central city. What today's announcement does is it gives us certainty, and that's the really, really important thing. It says this is the route for mass rapid transit. That is now clear. We've still obviously got some work to do, and I'll come back to that in just a moment about which mode we use along that route, but we've got that route. It gives us certainty that there will be a second tunnel. It gives us certainty that there will be a solution for the Basin Reserve, which has been long awaited. And I've got to say, you look at the pictures, and we've showed those pictures before when we went out to consultation. It is an elegant, beautiful solution, and one I think that Tim and I acknowledge you and the Save the Basin team there. I think it is one that takes the best of what was proposed before several years back by the Architecture Centre and makes that something which is really workable and really good quality urban design, and gives us more green space in the central city, which of course a lot of people are crying out for. The choice of MRT, the key bit there really is going to be, and Minister Wood talked about that quite a bit, is going to be how much development we get along that corridor. We get a lot of development along that corridor. Light rail works really, really well. If we can't deliver that, then you've got your plan B, your bus rapid transit. What drives that? And again, you had that allusion to working together, government and local government with Kāinga Ora, with housing and urban development. I've been a fan for a very, very long time and put to both Minister Wood and Woods the need for active delivery. So the question that I think, Bernard, you asked about housing, we've got a certain amount of growth which we expect in the region. That growth is highly predicated on migration. It's not so much natural growth anymore, but migration growth which is driving that. And of course that's highly uncertain. That relies on the policies of successive governments. It relies on economic conditions here and other places around the world. So there is a high degree of uncertainty about that. What is clear though is that the more spread out we are as a region, the higher carbon that is. So the argument is not so much between option 4 and option 1 or 2. The argument really is about where we are going to grow as a region if we're going to be a lower carbon region. If we start growing a lot out in the out in the outer parts of the region, that is going to be much more carbon intensive than if we grow, and this has been Wellington City's approach for many years, if we grow close to public transport, close to services where people can walk, people can bike and people can use public transport, that is the future we need to do. So it's not just about the planning and the planning rules, but it is about driving development into those areas, and that's why active delivery is important, and that's why working together with Kaingaora, working together with HUD, collaboration and working together with the communities in that area is going to be absolutely essential to deliver not only the development there, but good quality development that makes it a place that is beautiful, people want to live in. So active delivery model is key. And just the final thing I wanted to say is that, just to reflect back on our objectives. So we want a city that is people are able to get around in easily, that there is transport choice. We recognise that there will be people who need to move around in cars, there will be people who need to move freight around, but we want to have more people walking, cycling, using public transport. Wellington City already has by far the highest proportion of people who commute, whether it's to work or to education, by some means other than the car. We are streets ahead of any other part of the country. We want to continue to drive that more, but we recognise that transport choice is still important. We want a city that is livable. We want a city that accommodates the people and provides the housing that we need. And we want a city that is lower carbon. So what we've got in front of us today, a really big day for Wellington City, which aims to deliver on all of those objectives. And I think I'll end there. With one other comment to make, of course. Cabinet has made its decision, and that's what we've had reflected today. The two councils, Wellington City Council, Wellington Regional Council, both have to make our decisions. We make those decisions on the 6th of July. We were going to make them on the 30th of June, but of course we had to delay that a little bit to give us a bit of space between the Cabinet decision and then. And I'm very confident that our councils will both be enthusiastically supportive of this and of moving forward together. So then we get into the whole process of detailed design, all the geotech, all that sort of thing, the properties that are required to be acquired, etc. for delivery. So a lot of work still to be done, but this is a real milestone day, a really great day for Wellington City and for Wellington Region. Tēnā koutou katoa. I'll pass over for questions.
Just on that note, Andy, just to ask specifically, are you confident that when you take this to the council meeting, it will be signed off, no problems?
I'm confident we will, as in the wonderful way that Wellington does these things, we will have a vigorous debate, but we will sign it off.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Back on the active delivery model you were just mentioning, as sort of, I guess, an ideal scenario as that is, does that risk slowing things down if you're tying in more agencies into the overall project?
Well, we've already got agencies involved, but if we're going to get more housing there, I mean, what we can do at the moment is we can say, here's the district plan, and we wait for the market to deliver. Or we can say, here's the planning rules, and we can say we're actually going to go and deliberately go and do development, and it's best that we do that working together, council, Crown and community.
Is this plan and the de-intensified district plan going to deliver enough houses for 300,000 extra people over the next 30 years?
No, it's not going to deliver 300,000 because we never expected 300,000. We're talking about 200,000 across the region as a whole. So we were expecting 50 to 80 in Wellington City. And that number's probably come down a little bit because of COVID and the changes that's made to migration. So we've got ample capacity for housing within our region. At the moment, the number we've been given is about 74,000, but that's built on expectations of how much development we'll do. You own a property. How likely is it you're going to develop it? How likely is it you're not? So there's all sorts of things, and also about the economics of development. So last year, if they'd done that assessment, the same district plan settings would have given us twice as many houses as that. What's changed? Interest rates have gone up and the cost of building's gone up. So there are big things which change that, and we're going to go through a lot of economic cycles over the next 30 years.
So that 74,000, that's designed to cope with an increase in population of 200,000?
No. That's 74,000. So we need about 34,000 homes. That's the projection. So we've got capacity at the moment, that theoretical capacity of about 74. So that is easily going to provide for the number of homes that we need.
Don't we need to replace all that Homes that have been deemed quake prone or leaky prone.
We're talking net, and there's not that many in that situation.
I don't quite understand why you wouldn't go for much more housing to drive down housing prices and rents. Because at the moment, young people thinking of living in Wellington can see cheaper rents in Sydney, Melbourne, London, Paris, New York.
Yeah, well, look, can I give you two parts of the answer? The first one of those is the active delivery. So if we said we've got 74,000 expectation, that's without active delivery. If we actually go and say, and I take the car yards, for example, that the Minister was talking about, say, look, we're going to acquire that, we're going to acquire that, we're going to acquire that, and we're going to make sure there's a development there, you're immediately increasing that output. That 74,000 will rise as a result of doing that. The other part is, I think you're concerned about the de-intensification. I think you're referring to places like the Johnsonville line and places like that. If we were to have a lot more development in those areas, that development is not going to go along this corridor. So we've got to be really, really clear. We need to get something around 2/3 of the housing that occurs, the new housing that occurs over the next 30 years in Wellington. It's got to go over that corridor, because if we don't, we're not getting enough to support that mass transit route.
And do you have enough balance sheet capacity to invest in the water and the pipes and the like to avoid the sort of problem we've seen on Taranaki Street, where you didn't have the money to invest in the pipe and therefore we got a low-rise development?
Well, what I can tell you is that on Taranaki Street, within the next few weeks, you will see the start of a major project to put a new rising main up there, which will deal with exactly that issue. So we are investing in our underground infrastructure in a way which previous councils haven't done. Obviously, we've got water reform coming as well. So there's a lot of unknowns in that particular situation. But yes, we are investing to support that growth.
Andy, you acknowledged at the start the governance issues of project, and that obviously it was announced 3 years ago, but it's only really started picking up in the last 18 months. How do you feel sort of getting to this day? Is there some frustration that, enough hasn't been done on this?
Look, I think you can look back and say there were certain promises and expectations made which weren't realised. That was one of the things that led, of course, to the health check that was done. There have been some changes, significant changes made in Let's Get Wellington Moving, and I think you could say that over the last, 16, 17 months since that health check, extraordinary progress has been made.
How much of a factor were balance sheet limits of the government and of the council in the delays in getting Let's Get Wellington moving?
They weren't.
So there were no capital constraints?
No. So look, we were quite deliberate, and Bernard, I know that you told us to borrow to the max last year. I'm quite glad we didn't, because had we done so, of course, the interest rates rising would have hurt even more than they have. But we deliberately said we would go for 225% rather than going up to the max, which would have been sort of the 285%. Why? One of the things that we knew which was coming was the need to invest in Let's Get Wellington Moving.
One of the Minister's last points was comparing option 1 and 4 effectively and explaining the benefits of 1 over 4. Do those benefits remain if the fallback option of the MRT buses is taken over light rail?
Largely, yes. Yep.
Andy, I might be showing my age here a little bit, but I was at the announcement 3 years ago when Phil Twyford and Justin Lester announced Let's Get Wellington Moving. 3 years later, we're announcing Let's Get Wellington Moving. I mean, can we be sure that this is actually what's happening?
Well, what was announced 3 years ago was a little less clear, wasn't it? There's been a significant advance from that position. We now know exactly basin, tunnel, mass rapid transit route, and we've been talking about the delivery mechanisms. You've got, the comment made, and I know that you've seen that as a win, is the congestion pricing in there. So it's a lot of progress has been made.
But can we be sure, in 2019, a mass rapid transit route was announced, a second tunnel was announced. So can we be sure that this is actually what's happening? As
confident as I can be, given the vagaries of the political system.
Okay.
What would you say to businesses and to young workers thinking of coming to Wellington for jobs, or businesses trying to attract people here about the next 10 to 20 years in terms of transport and housing costs?
But what I will say is that I think the future for Wellington is very, very bright. We've been through the mill. COVID has been very, very tough for central cities everywhere. We've been through parliamentary protests. The economic conditions have been challenging, and of course we're still fixing parts of the city up after earthquake damage. But we are doing all of those things, and I think that the future for our city is very, very bright. People are coming back into it, the events are coming back, we are fixing buildings, we opened St James last week, and we are, with this package here, trying to make sure that we have a really good quality transport system supported by good quality infrastructure with housing delivery driven along that route. So we're actually deliberately trying to build more houses and create a livable low carbon city, which I think everybody would be very, very proud of.
What would be your message to Wellingtonians that are frustrated, I guess, with the time until we are going to get these options, looking at the congestion at the basin, or people wanting to move to Wellington, looking at a lot of our infrastructure and transport issues here? Is it hang tight?
A little bit of patience, but we are deliberately going to try and make sure that we do this as fast as we possibly can. And if there are things that we can make happen quicker, we will be doing so. And we have been having active discussion about exactly how that might be done. I'm quite confident we can deliver that.
So you're confident that you can make some of these projects get along faster?
Yes.
And we heard the Minister say P95 certainty for the
Yep.
7.4 billion figure.
Yep.
Are you wanting to give Wellingtonians assurances that if it were to blow out, it won't land on the taxpayers here to fund the extra fund?
Look, we are not expecting it to blow out. So, and as I said, it's a very, very long-term program. P95 is a high level of confidence. And of course, if you do have challenges, there are various things that you can do to mitigate those. And it's not just writing the cheque.
Mayor,
Yeah, okay, I'm being rescued. I'm happy to talk to you afterwards.
You are all welcome to have refreshments here. We've still got plenty, so please join us in doing that.
We have to give you back your room.
I think as long